Hey, music lovers. Welcome to the theme of liberation. This is probably my favorite discussion board because it allows us to pick tunes from all over the musical spectrum. And we're looking for songs that have the theme of liberation. Well, what is the theme of liberation, you say? Let's go through this a little bit. In blues, I said this three times already, I believe. In blues, the theme of the music was oppression. And music was made by that denoted some sadness and if we could just be freed, we could overcome life's obstacles, right? In jazz, the theme of the music is freedom, and we have people playing wild jazz solos on saxophone and guitar, which is taken right over into rock music and adopted by guitar players. And in rock music, the theme of the lyrics are liberation, liberation from all kinds of things. And that's what this is going to investigate here today. Um, as we, machines and tractors and farm machinery displaced cotton pickers and farm workers of all sorts from the Mississippi Delta, we had a mass exodus from the country to the city. And this really helped produce all kinds of different styles of music. Basically, music had to become louder because it's in the city, it's in a bar by loud city streets, and we needed amplification and microphones for the vocals, and the drummer could play louder, and the energy of the music just got to be a whole lot more intense. Lots of songs about working, right? Working day and night, Michael Jackson. If we could only not have to work so hard, life would be much better. In 1947, after World War II is over, we have in the coming years the biggest boom of babies in any time in our history. We call these kids that were born after the war or during the war, really from 1940 to 1950, the baby boomers. And in 1960, these kids are all going to be going to college, and we have the biggest enrollment of college students almost in our history. This is kind of going to give us a perfect storm in the history of rock and roll, of technology meets the biggest teen culture, and they adopt this music, and kablam, it goes into outer space. There's a theme in songs about sexual liberation. In one song in country music, it's called The Pill. And it's about basically now women have the freedom to put off having kids at an early age and go and join the workforce, be their own person, be their own money maker, and women are going to be liberated. In the 70s, there's a women's liberation movement about equal work for equal pay, and that's really due to, I think, the birth control pill that comes out in the early 60s. In the 50s, we had a secure family structure. There was a low divorce rate. That's all going to change in the 70s. As with a secure family, people would go on to I don't know, have more secure lives with the family structure in place. And that all seems to change as we get into the 60s and 70s. The technical innovations, again, that make life easier: cars, public transportation, radio, TV, movies, perfection of guitars, amps, and PA systems. Let's just look at the radio that is placed in the cars in the mid-50s, and now you can listen to your favorite radio, your favorite music, TV, weather while you're driving. There was a little transistor radio. It was yay big, handheld, and put a little earpiece in your ear, and you could crawl under the covers at night and listen to some of these radio stations broadcasting throughout the country that would play R&B music. So how does this all relate to rock and roll? All these radio stations now that are sometimes playing R&B music can be heard on you're 16 and you're driving your own car and you've got this radio and you're hearing this music. we can see why this teen generation adopts this music as their own. um, as technology, the Beatles can't play live from 63 to 67 because um, the crowd is louder than the music. Not going to be the case after 1968. We look at Woodstock in 1969. That PA is so big that and so loud that nobody can scream over it. And we finally had, it took a while, but we finally had conquered that problem. There's some political liberation in the 60s with John F. Kennedy becoming president in 1960. And the Kennedy style and the youthfulness that he brought in had all these college kids all pumped up. Also helping was he propelled the civil rights era. And black Americans are going to the Civil Rights Act that's passed in '64, and we're fighting for that in the '60s, to just give equality to all races, right? It's a simple thing. I don't think civil rights is on the left or the right. It's something that should have been done long before that. Vietnam it starts up in the late '50s, and by the mid '60s, we're drafting kids into a war and going over to Southeast Asia, and 56,000 kids are going to be killed in this war. With lots of songs about this war and songs that are trying to end the war. So we see that music is going to be used as a way to draw attention to the war and the horrors of war and to try to get this thing over with. In '74, Richard Nixon resigns as President of the United States. First time a president has been impeached. Music is a prime example of racial integration, as many of our songs had themes to help end the civil rights struggle by our black Americans. There are lots of songs about the power of drugs. I mean, if I had you try to make a list of all songs about drugs and alcohol, it would probably be in the hundreds. The official drugs of the '60s generation were pot and LSD. And it was thought that these drugs would break through the normal filters. As Jim Morrison and the Doors sang, break on through to the other side, right? And they thought that these drugs could be used for good. We know now that wasn't to be, that we're addicted to some drugs. And some drugs like heroin or cocaine are very addictive. We have an opiate crisis right now. So I don't think we've come a long way in terms of what we're dealing with in drug culture. These are kind of where it starts. In the '50s, there were some jazz musicians, Charlie Parker and Miles Davis. A lot of these guys were shooting heroin in the 1950s, as well as smoking pot. Pot has been around since the '30s. And even, I mean, it's been around forever, but in America, we made it illegal in the 1930s. It's a whole nother topic, but the LSD becomes illegal in 1966, '67, and lots of songs. The song that I picked that you can see is a drug song. Women's liberation movement of the '70s, equal pay for equal work. Lots of I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar by Helen Reddy in the 1970s. Lots of songs that are saying, hey, women want the same rights as men. Musicians themselves are freed from normal lives and class restrictions. As Elvis Presley is from the poor side of the tracks in Memphis, he's a gazillionaire by 1970, like 14 years, and he had some service in the army as well, and he's making movies all through the '60s and gets back to concerts in 1968. We can see that this is a way out. Sports weren't as big as they are in the '70s and '80s, but music seemed to be the way out for poor whites and poor blacks. I mean, who has ever heard of a rich kid being a rock star? It just doesn't seem to happen all that much. Our stars are always the lower realms of the economic ladder, right? And they work hard, and Bruce Springsteen is like the common dude who made it, and that's what he sings about. His themes are all about the hardworking guy who loves to drive his car and just drive on out of his problems. Um, the spiritual liberation, you can think of Bob Marley, we can think of Bob Dylan, James Brown, Public Enemy, the Clash, or the Sex Pistols, um, breaking free from the past to pursue a utopian vision. In some ways, it's religious. The Beatles were on a path to they go to India, and their transcendental meditation that they're using, and they're seeing that there's more to life than just the Catholic view that some are brought up, or the Protestant view. And there's songs about it, right? Lyrics that make you feel, rhythms that make you want to move, and that's what we're after. Go through your favorite songs and see what you can come up with that deal with these themes of liberation that I'm talking about. My favorite thing that we read that's in the reading is Elvis freed the body and Dylan freed the mind. I think Bruce Springsteen said that. Elvis freed the body and Dylan freed the mind with its lyrical content. After Bob Dylan, people felt that they could write anything, and there was no rules on what could be said with rock music. And same goes today, I think, with rap. There are no rules, right? And we'll trace the progression of rap music as well when we get to weeks 14, 15. That's it. The theme of liberation. You got it?